killer whale. For thousands of years, it was feared as a single-minded, ruthless hunter. But in just half a century, killer whales have emerged as the most popular and most studied marine mammals in the world. Our understanding of what they can do and why they do it has been transformed. When it comes to killer whales, not everything is black and white. A global investigation is producing a series of breakthroughs.
It's on! It's on! It's on! Got that one? It's a great sample.
Using a range of techniques, scientists can enter the lives of these surprisingly complex creatures.
It's very selfless behavior.
Okay, come back around.
They're revealing sophisticated teamwork. Incredible ingenuity. Even an advanced form of communication.
I stumbled into the existence of a dialect system that I really had no idea existed.
Now, the very latest research challenges our fundamental assumptions about what these animals are.
There's not just the killer whale anymore.
Finally, the killer whale's true colors can be revealed. The west coast of America. Grey whales are migrating towards distant feeding grounds. A mother escorts her calf, trying to keep a low profile. But a pack of killers has spotted them. 7 meters long, 5 tons in weight, and traveling at over 30 miles an hour. A single killer whale is a formidable foe. Working as a team, they're almost invincible. The grey whale mother is 6 times the killer whale's weight. But like wolves, the ocean's top predators can take on creatures far larger than themselves. They take it in turns to dunk the youngster. They're trying to drown it. Others fend off its mother. She tries to push her baby to the surface, but against this coordinated pack, the outcome is inevitable. In 1874, a whaling captain who witnessed these whale killers in action described them as spreading death and terror. And so the name killer whale was born. Bloody tales long haunted the human mind. The Roman writer Pliny described them as loathsome, pig-eyed assassins. Even their scientific name, Orcinus orca, means whale from the realms of the dead. But in 1964, a chance event that would change this fearsome reputation forever. One of these terrifying sea monsters was brought into captivity for the first time. For John Ford, today a leading killer whale scientist, this would make a deep impression.
The intention of the Vancouver Aquarium was to collect a specimen from which to make a realistic model of the animal, but the animal wasn't killed by the harpoon that they had used to capture it, and so they tried to keep it alive.
They dragged it 40 miles to a specially constructed pen in Vancouver Harbour, where it attracted huge crowds.
My father took me down there. I guess I was 9 years old at the time. And it was extremely thrilling seeing this large, scary killer whale in a captive setting.
The public quickly realized how placid this so-called killer actually was.
It dispelled, I think, a lot of the mythology in that it wasn't a ferocious animal. It didn't attack people. It responded well to trainers. It took fish readily from their hands. And so I think that was the very beginning of the change of public attitude towards this species.
They christened it Moby Doll, and they noticed for the first time that this animal talked.
She's making various sounds which you're recording. Could you give us a listen to these?
Yeah, certainly. These were made with a hydrophone in the water.
You any idea just what these noises might be in response to?
Oh, they may be curiosity on the part of the whale. They might be a sign of nervousness, or she may be calling for others of her kind.
I gather it'll be some time then before you can classify these words and make this dictionary, which you hope to do eventually.
Yes, it will.
This pioneering work was the first step on the road to revealing the killer whale's true nature. And by the time Moby Doll died of poor health after just 87 days, this single killer whale had inspired a generation to find out more. The discovery of unique markings on the dorsal fin and saddle patch meant individuals could be identified and followed. Gradually, scientists began to unravel their private lives. The largest of the dolphins, killer whales live in family pods, led not by the big-finned males, but by a matriarch. Females reach maturity at around 14 years and have a calf around every 3. Both sexes usually remain with their families for life. Determined to find out more, a young John Ford set out to sea. In the early 70s, he got to know 16 pods living around Vancouver Island.
I was really interested in underwater acoustics, the communication of these whales. I realized this was an opportunity to actually go out and record identified groups of killer whales.
Often they come under and investigate the hydrophone underwater. Oh, it's like E09.
Hoping to understand their language, John started to analyze each family's calls.
There it is again. It's a really strong descending tone that is classically aged.
But he was in for a surprise.
Very early in this work, by recording different groups, I stumbled into the existence of a dialect system that I really had no idea existed. These dialects aren't subtle. They're quite striking to the ear, even the untrained ear.
With modern technology, John can analyze the calls more closely.
This is an example right here of a northern resident group. Each individual shares the same repertoire of very distinctive calls. Now we'll just switch to the southern residents here. You can see immediately that the voice print, the spectrograms, are quite different between the two samples.
Each killer whale pod has its own dialect, allowing individuals to recognize family members and stick with them for life. Related families have similar dialects. What surprised John was finding a totally different language in the same Canadian waters.
Occasionally we would run into a different kind of killer whale. These little groups were very silent, but when they did vocalize, they made sounds that were entirely different from the resident groups.
Because they only appeared from time to time, these pods were nicknamed transient. Unlike the residents John knew so well, they had no interest in fish. They were mammal eaters. For a single killer whale, a 3-meter, 1-ton stellar sea lion makes a formidable target. But against a pod of natural-born killers, this lone male stands little chance. The transients work together. One catches the sea lion's attention. The second attacks. She bludgeons the sea lion into submission. The sea lion looks beaten, but the killer whales know to stick to their strategy. There's no need to risk being bitten now. A calf watches from the sidelines, learning techniques passed down from generation to generation. It may seem savage, but it's hugely effective. The transients, it seems, have their own unique lifestyle, comparable to a human culture.
We now realize that even though the species is found globally, in most parts of the world they seem to be highly specialized cultures that are focused on different prey types.
New Zealand's killer whale culture specializes in stingrays. The spines in their tails have been known to kill. But the local killers have found a way around this thorny problem. By inverting her victim, this female puts it in a trance and its sting out of action. In Patagonia, the most famous killer whale culture of them all. It takes years to perfect this extraordinary beaching technique. But behaviors like these mean this top predator can exploit every corner of the ocean. After man, killer whales are the most widespread mammal on Earth. But this global population is divided into at least 10 cultures. Scientists began to wonder how different these cultures were. Could there be multiple subspecies, or even separate species of killer whale? Southern California, just north of San Diego. The hub of a global investigation into killer whale genetics. Philip Morin is analysing DNA samples from around the world with the very latest equipment to build a killer whale family tree.
The new technologies have really changed the way we do genetics. We can sequence 16 times more DNA than we were doing before in a single experiment from hundreds of individuals.
The key is to work out when different populations stopped interbreeding.
The genetics are showing us that the time of divergence of these is much deeper than we had thought originally. It's in the order of hundreds of thousands of years, not tens of thousands of years.
we humans only split from our ancestors around 200,000 years ago. Killer whales parted ways much earlier than that. First to go, 700,000 years ago, were North America's mammal eaters. Next, the Antarctic population. That then split into several groups. Other cultures have continued to diversify ever since. Defining new species is a contentious issue, but Philip now thinks there could be 4 different species of killer whale, and maybe more.
There's not just the killer whale anymore. There are different species out there, and they're as different as 2 species of dolphin or 2 species of other whales.
Look closely, and the physical differences are there. Size, color, fin shape, saddle pattern, eye spot. This extraordinary discovery shatters our age-old perception of one global killer whale. Remarkably, there's a place where 3 of these proposed species live alongside each other. Antarctica, the killer whale capital of the world. To find out how these different types coexist, John Durbin and Bob Pittman are heading deep into the ice floes with a very smart piece of kit.
This is one of the satellite tags that we hope to deploy on the killer whales, and it should give us location hits maybe up to 30 or 40 times a day. We hope at least every hour.
It's cutting-edge technology, but it takes a centuries-old method to attach it.
Okay, so come back around.
The 40-gram tag is barely registered by the massive predator. Now John and Bob can follow its every move. The tagged killer heads deep into the ice. She's one of the pack ice killer whales, recognizable by ragged fins and a yellowish hue. They specialize in hunting seals. First, they spy hop to pinpoint their targets. Then, in perfect synchrony, they create a powerful wave. The seals withstand the first assault. A second orchestrated attack. One makes a break for it. It won't get far. The titanic struggle is entering its final phase. Only the iceberg can save the seal now. Against lesser predators, the feisty seal would stand a chance. But not against this team of specialist seal killers. When the next species is tagged, striking differences are revealed. Antarctic type A's. Much darker in colour, and at 9 meters long, a third larger than most other killer whales. Their huge size is an adaptation to hunting whales. Minke whales. Living along the ice edge, the minkies retreat at the first sign of danger. But one has ventured away from safety. The killers cut it off. This species uses stamina to wear down its fast-moving prey. The minke's only hope is to exhaust its attackers. But taking it in turns, the deadly entourage doesn't relent. After 2 hours, the minke's powers of fight and flight are waning. The whale killers close in to drown their victim. They've earned their feast. One by one, Bob and John are recording more and more remarkable strategies. A third pod, much smaller in size. These more agile killers are built to catch penguins. And there are others, which Bob and John believe hunt fish. It seems that by specializing in different prey, each of Antarctica's killer whale species avoids competition. This enables them all to thrive. At least 25,000, or half the killer whales on the planet, inhabit these waters. But how do these new species start out? The answer lies at the other end of the Earth, where scientists are investigating a split in the North Atlantic killer whale population. In Iceland, Philippa Samara and her team need to get within touching distance of a feeding killer whale, so they can attach their equivalent of an aircraft black box.
The D-tag has 2 hydrophones, which basically record the sound underwater. It records the movements of the whales and the depth that the whales are at. It has the suction cups, and that's how it goes on the whale. And it has this antenna, which helps us track where the whale is and get the tag back at the end.
Each killer whale needs a lot of fish to satisfy its monster appetite. This remarkable device should reveal how they do it. Until now, it's been thought that all North Atlantic killer whales use the same technique, originally observed in Norway. First, the killers track down their prey, shoals of herring hiding in the depths. They use clicks and listen for the echo, a sophisticated sonar. When one locates its target, it whistles its excitement. Then the pod heads down together, sometimes over 200 meters. It takes several hours to corral the herring up to the surface. A natural barrier to escape. Gradually, the killer whales panic their prey into tighter and tighter balls. Finally, they whack them. They stun whole swathes of fish, then suck up the oil-rich pickings. But in Iceland, there's no sign of herring being pushed to the surface. These hunters must have developed a new technique. There's only one way to find out.
Oh, we know this one, so that's good.
But deploying the D-tag seems beyond Philippa's team. A change of personnel brings a change in fortune. First, a youngster.
It's on!
It's on, it's on!
Oh my god.
Then, a big male.
It's on, it's on. Nice tagging, Ivan. That was great.
To form a picture of what's happening in the dark depths, the team employs an acoustic camera.
Okay, we have waves and sonar.
Okay.
3 waves.
3 whales. This is multi-beam sonar, which basically gives us an image of what's going on underwater, so we can see the whales interacting with the fish. This tells us what the fish is doing when the whales are feeding.
The team gathers data for the rest of the day. Philippa can now put the evidence together. First, the multi-beam sonar.
The sonar really works as a giant ultrasound, and you see that the whales are actually encircling the school of herring, so they're moving around it. And they do this to make the school tighter.
Then the D-tag reveals the killer information.
Here we can see what depth they're going to, that the whales are moving quite straight. They're not making any sounds, but when they start moving in circles, we see that they go much deeper, and they also produce a lot of sounds.
One sound in particular catches Philippa's attention.
You can hear it now. So this is the herding call, which is a very low frequency and long call, and we think that it's really used to basically scare the herring, so it makes the swim bladder of the herring vibrate, and it makes the whole herring school bunch even tighter, which is a very effective hunting technique for these whales.
Most North Atlantic killer whales take hours to herd up their prey. But thanks to their unique herding call, Iceland's killers do the same thing in minutes. This small innovation is hugely significant. It shows that the North Atlantic's fish-eating killer whales are growing apart. As more differences develop and populations become isolated, eventually a new species could emerge. The discovery of different kinds of killer whale has real implications for their conservation. Each is precious. None more so than the southern residents of Washington State. 50 years ago, the public's fascination with Moby Doll led to a huge demand for captive killer whales. Trappers knew just where to look.
In places just like this from the early 60s, the resident killer whales were rounded up and captured for the aquarium industry.
For Sam Wasser, the memories are still fresh. Trappers used boats, helicopters, and explosives to herd frightened animals into sheltered bays.
It must have been horrific for these whales because For one thing, killer whales are a predator. They're very, very intelligent, and they're highly social organisms. And putting all those animals together and then ripping the young away from their mothers must have just been enormously stressful. One of the real telltale signs of that is that in Penn Cove, where one of the really big captures happened, those animals have not been back.
By 1976, following a backlash from conservationists, the authorities called a halt to the roundups. But the damage had been done. Four decades on, just 84 southern residents survive, and this number is falling. Sam wants to find out why. His main research tool is a far cry from the modern technology being used elsewhere. Tucker, a rescue dog with a special talent. He's known as the Pooper Snooper.
We're still about 4.5 southwest of Secretary Island.
Fantastic. Sam has three theories for the killer whale's decline. Lack of food, a build-up of man-made chemicals, and stress caused by whale-watching boats. Sam needs to find the smoking gun. But his methods are unconventional.
When we first started, people thought we were crazy, but now they're taking it quite seriously, and they realize this is an incredibly powerful method, and it's really, there's nothing like it.
Tucker is an expert at sniffing out killer whale poo.
Dogs are easily 5 times more efficient than a human. If you were just trying to do this without a dog, you'd have to be right behind the whale.
Killer whale feces float, but not for long. Tucker must be fully focused. When he senses his target, Tucker makes it clear where the boat has to go.
I see it right there.
Bringing you around, Amanda.
Great. It's a brown, like about the size of a paper dollar. Nice one over here. Oh, huge one, Giles. Go straight. Huge. Ooh, look at that. I got it there. Got that one. Got it. Good. It's a great sample.
All in a day's work for the Pooper Snooper.
The whole trick to this method is to find these dogs that are so obsessed with their ball that he will just keep working all day long, nonstop, for this ball reward.
Well done. Ooh, awesome.
Woo-hoo, that is a stinky. Doesn't get better than that.
The stinky samples contain incredible information.
We can get a whole health profile from the animal. We can get, its psychological stress state, its nutritional stress state, its reproductive condition, if it's pregnant or not, what the toxin loads are, and we can tie all of that to the time of the year that we're collecting the samples and what the conditions are. How much fish are around, how many boats are around, so it's pretty remarkable, really.
Sam has discovered that the southern residents are starving. Overfishing and the damming of breeding rivers mean their salmon prey are in short supply. As a result, their stress hormones soar, and they break down their body fat. This releases DDT and other toxins into the bloodstream. It's enough to kill a whale. But that's not all. During the captures in the 60s and 70s, almost an entire generation was removed, leaving few animals of breeding age today.
They haven't been breeding that well, and 2 of the 3 pods have been producing nothing but males. The last 13 births, 11 of them have been male. The reason that they're making more males could be chance,
but sometimes with inbreeding you tend to produce more males.
But killer whales are resilient animals.
These large mammals that have a long generation time, they can recover. We just have to make sure that they have the ability to recover, and that means having good food, having a clean environment to live in, and reducing their stress loads.
The southern residents will need human help to survive. But a recent finding suggests that killer whales can learn to help themselves. In the Falkland Islands, the elephant seals are wise to the predators lurking just offshore. They won't leave the safety of the beach until it's absolutely necessary. As a result, few killer whales patrol these shores. But recently it was discovered that one female has found a way to unlock this rich source of food. Silently, stealthily, she risks it all to enter a tidal pool. Her calf follows her every move, learning her unique technique. If she gets the timing wrong, she'll be stranded and die. But if she can sneak in unnoticed, the rewards will be worth the risk. The female spots her target. The tide is falling. She doesn't have long. She edges further into the pool. This is her chance. Now, with a mouthful of floundering seal, she must escape the shallow channel. She's made it. Amazingly, she won't keep her prize to herself. It's the rest of her family that reaps the reward. It's a brutal end for the young seal. But this selfless behavior is key to this family's survival. And there's new evidence that this commitment to others goes beyond what we've ever expected. It's summer in the Norwegian Arctic. German biologist Heike Vester has made a remarkable discovery. She and her assistant Medita have found a family that takes caring and sharing to a level rarely seen in the animal kingdom.
And here's one. Hello. That's the female with the neck. It's very easy to recognize. And she has a calf, so she might be nursing the calf. You can really see that she's being pushed from below. There's the calf, so she was nursing the calf. Very nice.
Like all killer whale families, this one is led by a matriarch. But one pod member sets this family apart.
It's a female. Stumpy. Oh, got Stumpy over here. It's right there, see?
Stumpy's severed fin means she's easily identified. First spotted in 1996, people assumed she'd been hit by a boat. 6 years later, her mother had vanished, and Stumpy had taken up with another pod. Since then, she's been seen with 4 different families.
I'm so happy to see her again because she's 17 years old now and she's really handicapped and she could not have survived by herself.
To find out how she does survive, Heike wants to see Stumpy underwater.
Yeah, she is, yeah.
With the camera crew here, this is her chance.
Oh, wow. I didn't expect that. It's really twisted. Now from above you only see the dorsal fin that's cut, but then now I could really see the back. And it really looks like it has problems swimming.
The tail is restricted in the movement. It doesn't really go all the way up and down.
When she is struggling harder than the others, that means that she would use much more energy than the others, would probably need to feed more than the others, which she could not catch by herself.
This could explain why Stumpy's growth has been stunted. To find out how she eats at all, Heike must witness a hunt.
We stopped now because the killer was over there and it looks like they're foraging. What I do now is put in a hydrophone and listen so I know they're foraging, because if they do, they use echolocation clicks.
Nearly 50 years after the first attempts to interpret Moby Doll's calls, Heike is still trying to unravel their language.
That means they're looking for fish, they're scanning the fjord.
Their sophisticated sonar can determine the size and even species of fish nearby. Heike's found that this family targets mackerel and salmon. Stumpy seems keen to join in.
And I listen now for any changes in their communication, because as soon as they get a fish, especially a salmon, I will hear it immediately.
Each species of fish provokes a different call.
Ah, they are calling. Might be that I found a fish.
Suddenly, action.
Action! Oh, next to us, on the left side.
It's every killer whale for itself, chasing down the mackerel one by one. But the real surprise is Stumpy.
Over there. It's the female and Stumpy hunting together.
She's right at the heart of it. Chasing not the fish, but the other killer whales. The 6-meter female has caught a mackerel, barely 30 centimeters long. She could easily swallow it whole. Instead, she slices it in half and drops a share. Stumpy is there to grab it. Whether she's being deliberately fed or just scavenging scraps is hard to tell. But this shred of evidence must explain Stumpy's survival. But why would a family of killer whales adopt and care for a handicapped animal?
Well, the reason why the others would help Stumpy is probably purely social, that in such a community, the whole group is important and not just individuals, so they wouldn't leave sick individuals behind. They'd rather take care of them. It's very selfless behavior. This could be one example of the killer whales to show how social they are, but there's more to it than we know right now, which makes it really, really exciting.
Perhaps this should come as no surprise. Recent studies of killer whale brains have revealed specialized cells for processing emotions, similar to our own. Stumpy's story shows how far our understanding has come since Moby Doll first captured people's hearts. Captive killer whales still draw huge crowds. SeaWorld has grown into a $3 billion franchise. But there's a price to pay for putting large, sociable predators in small, artificial environments. Since 1988, SeaWorld has recorded over 100 incidents of aggression towards trainers. And there have been 4 fatalities in theme parks across the globe. In contrast, no one has ever been killed in the wild. Trainers aren't allowed in a pool anymore. The capture of wild killer whales is now banned across the Western world. But recently, an exception. A stranded calf rescued in Holland. The courts had 3 options: release her, put her down, or bring her into captivity. The Dutch authorities decided the safest option was to move her to Tenerife's Loro Park, who agreed to look after her. Heike has come to see this latest arrival.
Good morning.
She believes it's related to her study animals in Norway and, like Stumpy, could be taken up by a wild pod.
Inside, I'm very nervous and quite upset, so I have to calm myself.
Please take your time, no problem.
Heike's never seen captive killer whales before.
Well, I would like to stay here and just get acquaintance a little bit, you know. You know, I recognize the calls. It's hard for me to hear that. Yeah, so.
The calls of the new arrival, Morgan, at least partially match the dialect of a pod in Norway that Heike thinks could be her family. But despite a campaign to release her, Loro Park will continue to look after Morgan, as requested by the Dutch authorities. In the meantime, its trainers work hard to keep all their killer whales physically and mentally stimulated. But Morgan's keepers soon reported that she wasn't responding to their whistles. So Javier arranged for a hearing test.
I have here the results. They found that she has hearing loss that could be even total.
If Morgan is deaf, it could explain her stranding and support her remaining in captivity. This could mean a life in Loro Park's big top. It's showtime. The trainers do their best to put on a performance. Loro Park believes the show makes a connection between people and animals, and every year they channel €100,000 into whale and dolphin research and conservation.
For me, it doesn't match up to keep such animals in captivity for this. So it's not enough.
So what about Morgan? Finding her suspected family again could be difficult, and her deafness has to be considered. But Heike still feels there's hope.
Seeing Stumpy this summer proved that even if we don't find Morgan's direct relatives and her family group, that there's still a good chance that she will be taken care of by other groups that are not related to her.
Morgan's story reveals how our relationship with killer whales is still evolving.
When we first had chimpanzees in captivity, we also made them do tricks. They had to wear clothes and so on, and now we learned. And they are in more natural groups, in a more natural environment, and I think we have to go this way because the captive animals that are there now, some of them cannot be released. So you have to find the best way possible for these animals to retire and make it as natural as possible.
Captive killer whales have raised the profile of their kind, but their future is uncertain. In the time since Moby Doll first went on public display, our understanding of killer whales has changed beyond recognition.
It's amazing today to look back when this study began and how little we knew about this species. We didn't really know what they ate, what their life cycle was like, their natural history, anything about their biology really. It was all mythology. These were just the scary, dangerous predators that were to be shot on sight.
But with evidence gathered from across the globe, we now have a clear picture of the killer whale's true nature. They can be brutal, intelligent, and can work as a deadly team. The emergence of new species changes the way we look at killer whale populations across the world. While some are struggling to survive, others are finding ways to adapt. Interpreting their language is still a dream.
I gather it'll be some time then before you can classify these words and make this dictionary, which you hope to do eventually.
Yes, it will.
But the discovery of close families and diverse cultures means we can relate to killer whales more closely than to any other animal in the ocean.
Maybe we're not the only ones that are social and take care of each other, but that animals are more similar to us than we believed before.
After a 50-year journey from fear to fascination, a new era of understanding is just beginning.